Overfunctioning. It's something that strong, capable, self-sufficient women do in relationships without even realize they're doing it. Since it takes one to know one, I want to start by telling you something that happened in couples counseling near the end of my second marriage. 9 years into our marriage, we were in counseling, and at some point, my husband said something that I will never forget. He said he could have been doing more, handling more of the finances, taking on more responsibility, but he never said anything. He just let me do it. And I could have been angry, but I just felt bad when he said it, actually, because I had spent years doing something that I genuinely didn't like to do, paying bills, balancing the checkbook. Not my forte since I'm the other side of the brain. And he could have helped the entire time. He just never offered. But I also never asked. And here's what I had to come to terms with. I had made it easier for him not to. I had stepped up so consistently and so completely that there wasn't any room for him to step in. I had overfunctioned my way into resentment, and I hadn't even realized that I was doing it. After both of my marriages ended, I became a single mom, doing absolutely everything alone. First time with a 11-month-old, second time with 14, 9, and 4-year-olds. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Working full time, running the house, kids in different schools with different activities, no child support coming in consistently, just me making it all happen every single day. And here's what that does to you over time. It turns you into a doer, not just out of necessity, but out of identity. You stop being able to just sit and be. You have to always be doing something, because if you stop, things fall apart. That was my reality for years. And for those of you who are already doers, like I already was, it's even worse. And to be honest, I even passed some of that on to my children without meaning to. I mean, they helped around the house when they were younger, but probably not as much as they could have, because I just did things without asking, without assigning, without waiting. I taught them without ever saying one word that mom would handle it. And they didn't have to do it since they got up so early for school, or since they had to do their homework after dinner. For whatever reason, I was telling myself. That's what overfunctioning looks like from the inside. You're not trying to control everything. You're just trying to keep everything from falling apart. And eventually the two things start to feel the same. If any of this is hitting close to home for you, and I have a feeling it might be, I want you to know that this is exactly the kind of work we do together in the Becoming Her Sisterhood, my new membership program that is opening next week. The link to get on the wait list is in the comments, because this work is so much better when you do it together. So by the time I started dating again after my second divorce, I was completely exhausted from years of doing everything alone. And I think that exhaustion is part of why I stayed as long as I did in the 3-year relationship that I've talked about before, that ultimately wasn't the right fit for me. He cooked, he did things, he was, for lack of a better word, the leader, former military, liked things a certain way. And honestly, at that point in my life, someone taking charge felt like relief. Plus, acts of service is my primary love language. But there was a cost to that relationship too, besides time. I had lost over 100 pounds at that point, real significant work that I was proud of. And he would cook things that were not healthy for me. I spoke up. It would change for about a week and then go back to the way it was before. Eventually, I stopped speaking up because I got tired of asking and being disappointed. So I let it go. And that was totally on me. And over time, I gained back a significant amount of that weight. That's what happens when your needs consistently feel like an inconvenience. You stop voicing them, you shrink, and the silence costs you more than having the conversation ever would have. So let's talk about what overfunctioning actually looks like, because it doesn't always look the way you think. Overfunctioning, or another way of saying it, overgiving, is always being the one to reach out first. Always smoothing things over when there's tension. Always keeping track of what needs to happen and making sure it does. Always being the emotional manager of the relationship. Do any of those sound familiar? It's also the quieter version, doing things that aren't yours to do because it's easier than waiting to see if somebody else will do them. Taking over the finances, even though you hate it. Handling logistics because you don't trust that he will. Anticipating everybody's needs before they even ask. It's especially common in single moms and self-sufficient women, and here's why. When you have spent years doing everything on your own because you had no choice, doing everything becomes who you are. It stops being something you do and starts being something you are. And then you bring that identity into a relationship and keep doing everything, even when you finally have a partner who could share the load. The fear underneath all of it usually goes something like this. He's going to think I need too much if I ask for help. He'll think I'm needy. If I stop doing everything, nothing will get done. If I'm not useful, he won't want me. Sound familiar? If you want to go deeper on this, if you want to actually look at where this fear comes from in your own life and start to shift it, I have a great free guide that's a really good place to start. It's called 5 Lies That Women Believe. 5 Lies Women Over 50 Believe About Love and the Truth That Changes Everything. Type guide in the comments and I'll get it to you right away. It's really helpful. So here's the dynamic that nobody talks about, and it's the one I lived in my second marriage without even seeing it. When you do everything, you take away his opportunity to show up. And over time, he stops trying. Not necessarily because he's lazy or he doesn't care, although that's what most of us think, but because what you've created doesn't require him to. You've already handled it. And then we resent them for not showing up, even though we never gave them the chance to. That's what happened in my second marriage. I took over the finances, something I really didn't enjoy and I wasn't naturally suited to. And I did it for years. And it turned out that he was capable of handling it and wanted to. He just never said anything. And I never asked, like I said. We were both operating in a system that neither of us really consciously created, and it cost us both something. And I don't say this to assign blame to him or to myself. I say it because I think it's important to understand how these dynamics work, because you can't change something if you don't see it. So I also want to tell you what it looks like when you finally get it right, because that's what I have now, and I want you to be able to picture it. My husband, Hugh, takes out the garbage every single time without being asked. He tells me it's not my job. And it took me a while to let that be true, because after my son went to college, I had been taking out my own garbage for so long that somebody else doing it felt really strange. But it goes so much deeper than the garbage. We cook together, or I should say, he preps everything while I'm still at work, and I come home and I finish, or we do it together. He puts the clothes in the washer or the dryer. I fold, or we do it together. We are 100% a team in the truest sense of the word, and I have never had that before. Nobody assigned those roles. Nobody negotiated them. They just evolved because we're both paying attention to each other, and neither one of us is trying to do everything or avoid everything. We're just together, building something together. And if we needed to talk about it, we would. That's what partnership feels like from the inside. And it is so different from what I experienced most of my adult life that I still sometimes stop and notice it. So how do you actually stop overfunctioning? Especially if it's become so automatic, you don't even notice that you're doing it. Well, first, you have to notice it. It might sound obvious, but it is the hardest part. You need to start paying attention to where you're doing things that aren't yours to do, where you're smoothing things over that he could smooth over, where you're initiating every single thing. Just notice. Second, create space, not as a game, not to test him, but genuinely stop doing the thing and see what happens. If you're always the one reaching out, don't reach out and see if he does. If you always make the plans, don't make the plan and see if he steps up. What happens in that space tells you something important, because a man who is genuinely invested will notice and will show up. A man who only shows up because you make it possible for him not to, that's information you need. And third, speak up and say what you need directly without softening it into nothing. I would love it if you took care of this, is a complete sentence. You don't have to explain why or apologize for having the need. I know it's not easy if you're not used to speaking up for what you need, and every time you do it though, it'll get easier. And remember, you are not responsible for managing his participation in the relationship. That's his job. Your job is to show up as yourself and let him show up as himself. If he doesn't, that tells you everything. You don't have to earn your place in a relationship. The right person isn't there because of everything you do. He's not there because you cook and manage and initiate and smooth things over and keep running everything. He's there because of who you are. And the only way to find that out, really find that out, is to stop doing everything and see who shows up. I know that's a very vulnerable thing to do, especially when you've spent years being the one who holds it all together. Especially when doing everything has felt like the only way to make sure that things get done. But I promise you, the right man will show up in that space, not because you made it impossible for him not to, but because he wanted to. Next week, we're talking about why we stay so long in relationships we already know that aren't right for us. If you've ever done that and wondered why, make sure that you're subscribed. I am not just your coach, I'm your proof. If you'd like to get my newsletter, say yes in the comments and I'll take care of it. Plus, you'll get my brand new guide called The 5 Lies Women Over 50 Believe About Love. Don't forget that the Becoming Her Sisterhood link is in the comments. I would love to see you there. And if this video helped you, please subscribe, because every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it takes to create the relationship you deserve. Because your best relationship starts with you. See you next week.